Fatal Strike Productions presents A Knight's Anguish. Produced and narrated by Nathan Boston. Written by Rose Strickman. And illustrated by Sneck. Sir Leith Alancer, Knight Primary of the Order of Baldir, defender of the city, hero of more battles than he could remember, looked out over the rooftops of Northwick and gnashed his teeth. From his perch, high in the Temple of Baldir, he could just make out the main city gates. They were sealed shut. They had been that way for 3 weeks now, and every day they didn't open, Leith's fury and frustration mounted. Behind him, he sensed, rather than heard, Domar step onto the balcony. Leith didn't take his eyes from the sealed gates.
"Are the others ready?"
Yes, said Domar after a noticeable hesitation.
"But, Leith, are you sure this is a good idea? The king has ordered the gates sealed and—" "The king's orders will see this city starved."
Leith turned at last to fix Domar with a cold, gray gaze.
"There haven't been any grain shipments in 3 weeks. Do you want to see children dying in the streets?"
No, of course not.
"But, Leith, I've heard terrible tales. Tales of monsters outside the city walls. Our order was founded to protect the people from such monsters. Or don't you remember? More likely, it's brigades in costumes."
Leith was devoted to Baldir, the legendary hero who had fought off evil creatures. But monsters only existed in ancient texts and great tales of Baldir himself.
"Shall we remain in our temple like cowards when the people need us?" "But the king has ordered—" "We do not have to obey the king. We have to obey the precepts of our order."
Leith strode back inside the temple, each step firm.
"Tonight, we go outside the city. We'll see what these monsters truly are."
No moon graced the sky that night, but the stars were spread thickly, and by their dim light, several dark shapes exited Northwick's wall through a hidden door that was little more than a crack. Leith, muffled in a dark cloak, his sword and dagger at the ready, jumped down and scanned the area keenly. Monsters or no, there was clearly something outside the city walls. He himself had seen the bloody remnants of merchants' caravans and the blackened ruins of peasant villages. Leith turned back and let out a short, sharp whistle. One by one, his men hopped down, weapons at the ready. They had chosen this hidden exit for its location. It led out onto the forest to the west of the city, far from any villages or roads. Not only was this exit hidden from prying eyes, but Leith had determined that the enemy was likely to be hiding here. Skilled in the art of night marching, the men made their way silently through the forest. They carried no torches, but had chewed on moonlichen until their very teeth glowed, enhancing their vision at night. Leith's every sense was alert. He knew there would be little chance of eradicating the enemy tonight, even if it did come to battle. But hopefully they would be able to gather useful information. But that depended on their getting home alive. So far, the enemy hadn't left many survivors. There came a sudden rustle. The knights fell still. Leith crouched in a defensive position, gripped firm on his sword. Then, behind Leith, Sir Marcus let out a scream. Leith whirled around. Something had hold of Marcus. A great rope, no, a tentacle wrapped around his throat. Marcus howled, slashing at the tentacle with his dagger, but the tentacle tensed and yanked back. Marcus was pulled off his feet and hauled away, disappearing into the shadows.
"Enemy on the right!"
Leith was already leading the charge when the enemy charged them. Little men, no, more like monkeys, scampering along the ground, giggling madly with glowing red eyes and long ears. Overhead, things like giant squids or octopi swinging themselves from branch to branch.
"Defense huddle!"
Leith shouted.
"I said defense huddle!"
He repeated when his gaping men failed to respond. Shocked back into their senses, the knights all gathered in a tight ring, but the enemy was too numerous. The creatures were closing in. Monsters, Leith thought wildly.
Monsters like those Baldir had fought. Legends had now come to life.
But then there was no time to think. More tentacles lashed out, yanking screaming knights off their feet and into the air. The little ape things, saliva dripping off fangs, leapt and swarmed, dragging men down. Leith hacked and stabbed and spun. But all the while, more and more monsters were swarming out of the trees. More and more horrors attacking them. A scream cracked out beside Leith. Domar was fighting off the swarming ape things, green blood exploding from his every swing. Leith waded in. Rage and fear powered his every swing. He hauled Domar out of the mess of body parts and scanned the battle. It was hopeless. He saw that immediately. Those of his men who hadn't already fallen were being swarmed or strangled or batted down like flies. There was nothing he could do to save them.
Leith!
Domar pulled him back. Leith hadn't even realized he was advancing.
We must get back to the city!
But Domar was already pulling him away.
Leith! We must return the news! Now! No! The men! Our brothers! Dead,
said Domar flatly. Don't let that death be for nothing. Leith swallowed tears. Dormir was right. Their brothers could not have died for nothing. They must survive and get back to the city with news of what they'd learned tonight. The creatures from damnation are real and hiding in the forest. Together, the two knights turned and ran back to the city with news of horror.